Hi students, this is a summary for Unit 10 Verb and Adjective Complement Clauses. Let's begin. First of all, let's remember what's a complement clause. A complement clause is a dependent clause that completes the meaning of a verb, an adjective, or a noun. In the previous unit, we've seen dependent clauses as complements of nouns. In this opportunity, we'll see dependent clauses which perform the function of complement clauses of verbs and adjectives. Complement clauses are also called nominal clauses. This is because they can perform or they can occupy the slot of a noun phrase within a clause. In brief, complement clauses can function as the subject, the object, or the predicative of a clause. In this unit, we are going to see how complement clauses can be controlled by verbs or adjectives. So the following examples will be related to that. In this first example, I said that it wasn't perfect. We can see how the dependent clause is placed after a verb. In this case, we can say said is the controlling element of this dependent clause. Here, the dependent clause acts as the direct object of the clause, being placed after a transitive verb. As we said before, complement clauses can also complete the meaning of adjectives. This means that the controlling element will be an adjective. In this example, I'm certain to regret it. We can see how the dependent clause is placed after the controlling element, which in this case is an adjective. The function of this dependent clause is the one of an adjective complement. In this section of the slide, we can see how complement clauses can be controlled by nouns too. Remember, we've seen this in Unit 9. And remember that when complement clauses are controlled by nouns, this complement clause provides the content of the head noun. Here we have an example. Now let's see how to analyze verb and adjective complement clauses. Let's see the type of complement clauses we can find within a major clause. There are 4 types of complement clauses. All of those complement clauses can be controlled by either verbs or adjectives, and we can distinguish them according to their complementizers. The first type of complement clause we're going to mention is the finite complement clause. Remember that finite complement clauses are those clauses which are marked for tense or modality. Finite complement clauses controlled by verbs or adjectives can be that clauses and WH clauses. Within that complement clauses, sometimes the complementizer that can be omitted. As in the example, I thought it was a good film. In here, we can add the complementizer that, but we can remove it as well. In the following example, she didn't ask what my plans are. Our dependent clause is placed after a verb, as in the previous example too. In these 2 cases, the controlling elements are verbs. Please don't forget that whenever we call WH clauses, we include how to. Non-finite complement clauses can also be controlled by adjectives or verbs. In the following 2 examples, we can see a to infinitive clause and an ing clause being complements. But there are additional types of complement clauses too. These additional types of complement clauses include bare infinitives and ed complement clauses. Bare infinitive clauses are clauses which include an infinitive verb without to. And ed complement clauses are always separated from the controlling element by a noun phrase. When we refer to the grammatical position of complement clauses, we refer to the place or the spot where these complement clauses are located within the major clause. There are three possible positions for complement clauses to occur within a major clause, and those are subject position, post-predicate position, and extrapost position. Let's see them in detail. Complement clauses in subject position are placed before the main verb of the major clause, and they can be controlled by either verbs or adjectives. This position is so-called pre-predicate because the complement clause comes before the predicate. It's placed before the main verb of the major clause. Let's illustrate this position. In this first example, our complement clause begins with the WH word, what, and it's placed in the pre-predicate position. This means it's in subject position. Please note that the dependent clause is occupying the space of the subject within the clause, and it's placed before the main verb of the major clause, which in this case is. In the following example, we have a complement clause which begins with the complementizer that, and it's also placed in subject position. Please note that in this case, our controlling element is an adjective. All complement clauses which are placed after the controlling element, either an adjective or a verb, are placed in post-predicate position. Here we have two examples to illustrate this position. In the first example, we can see a to-infinitive clause which is placed after a verb. And in the second example, we have a WH complement clause placed after an adjective. Please note both of them are placed in the predicate and they are controlled by different elements. The first is controlled by a verb and the following is controlled by an adjective. Now let's see some common patterns that generally occur in post-predicate position. These are the three most common patterns when talking about that complement clauses placed in post-predicate position. Regarding WH clauses placed in post-predicate position, these are the most common patterns. In general terms, to-infinitive clauses placed in post-predicate position are the commonest and they have more patterns to follow. These are the most common patterns for to-infinitive clauses placed in post-predicate position. And these are the most common patterns for ing clauses placed in post-predicate position. The last position to consider is the extrapost position. We have seen the extrapost function in Unit 8 previously, but now we're talking about the position within a major clause. Remember that we have an extrapost position every time we find the dummy it filling the slot of the subject within the clause. In these cases, the complement clause always occurs after the predicate. Remember that generally speaking, the dummy it does not refer to anything specifically. It only fills the grammatical slot of the subject. There's something else to consider regarding the extrapost position, and is that remember that every time you have the dummy it beginning the subject, we can use the dependent clause or the complement clause in this case to fill the place of that dummy it. For example, to see them again is good. Finally, let's talk about the syntactic roles of complement clauses within major clauses. Please remember that anytime we talk about the syntactic role of a complement clause, we are talking about the specific function it performs within the clause. The syntactic roles of complement clauses can be subject, direct object, subject predicative, extrapost subject, and adjective complement. Let's see some examples. Those complement clauses which are placed in subject position have the syntactic role of subject. apart from being placed in subject position, they also function as the subject of the major clause. This is how you have to analyze this unit. First, find the dependent clause. It's a good idea to find the dependent clause first and then check where is it placed and what is this complement clause completing the idea of. In this case, our dependent clause is an ing clause, which is placed in the slot of the subject. Now let's see that this ing clause is giving us information related to the adjective of this clause, which is useless. So in this case, we can say that our controlling element, which is the one being complementing, is the adjective useless. The type of clause which is complementing this adjective is an ing clause, which is a non-finite clause. It's placed in the position of the subject and it has the syntactic role of the subject. Those complement clauses which are placed in post-predicate position can have the syntactic role of a direct object or a subject predicative, depending after what kind of verb they are placed. On the one hand, remember that every time we have the complement clause placed after verb be in any time tense, we'll have the function of a subject predicative. On the other hand, if the verb is a transitive verb, what we'll have after as a complement clause will be functioning as the direct object. In the example, he began paging through all newspapers, we can see a non-finite ing clause, which is placed in post-predicate position controlled by the verb began. Began is a transitive verb, so we can say that this ing clause serves as the direct object of the major clause. Please check that in the following analysis, we said that the controlling element is the verb began, which is complemented by a non-finite ing clause in post-predicate position and having the syntactic role of a direct object. Then, in the example, the truth is that it's necessary to support the conclusions, our controlling element is verb be in present form is, which is complemented by a finite that complement clause in the post-predicate position because it's placed after the main verb of the clause, and it serves the syntactic role of a subject predicative. Here we have another example of a predicative, but in this time we have a verb which is not verb be, but it's a linking verb. Remember that linking verbs are also verbs of incomplete predication, so they need a complement after them. This is an example of an ed complement clause, which is placed in post-predicate position having the role of a predicative. Please note that in this case, our controlling element is separated from the complement clause by a noun phrase which is the door. Regarding the extra post subject, all those complement clauses which are placed in the extra post position have this syntactic role. In the first example, we can see how our controlling element easy is followed by a non-finite to infinitive clause in the extra post position. Why do we say this? Remember that in cases where the dummy it fills the slot of the subject, we'll have an extra post position. In this case, this to infinitive clause is also an extra post subject. How do you know this? Remember to remove the dummy it and place the dependent clause in the slot of the subject. Then we have a second example where we illustrate the to infinitive clause being controlled by a verb in the extra post position 2, functioning as an extra post subject. All those complement clauses which are placed in post-predicate position and which are controlled by an adjective have the only syntactic role of adjective complement. In the example, I'm glad that I find you again, we can see our dependent clause, which is a complement clause beginning with the complementizer that, placed immediately after the adjective glad. In this case, we can say that our controlling element is an adjective, glad, which is complemented by a finite dot complement clause in the post-predicate position, and this complement clause serves as an adjective complement. Okay, students, this is it for Unit 10, verb and adjective complement clauses. If you need more information, please contact me. See you.